ladies and gentlemen, to our podcast. My name is Justin Robinson.
And I'm Badir McCleary, and we are back with episode 6 of the Art School Graduates podcast.
Yes, sir.
It's about that time. We're getting ready for the end of the year. Art shows are slowing up, becoming one big thing called Art Basel, but we got a whole episode on that next episode.
Yes,
so.
next week. Tune in next week, you guys. We're gonna have a very thorough conversation about Art Basel.
Yeah.
You guys should have heard our first hour of conversation about it. You guys would have been like, well, got a good point there. So we're gonna save that for next week.
Yeah, give us a chance to, get down there, see some things, and touch into some stories and just really, get on the ground running. But today we got some really dope topics that we think about. What you got for us, Justin? I know you got one that you put me on to, and I'm like, oh, this is wild.
Man, it's just like, when are the rich going to stop? Like, what is their threshold of collecting going to stop? So came across this article this week in Art News talking about Christie's and how they canceled the sale of 15 to maybe $20 million over a T-Rex. And the reason they canceled it is because they found out that some of the bones were replicas. They weren't real. Like, Badir, what is going on? When is there a line for collecting? Obviously someone was going to buy this for 20 million until someone was like, yo, these are not real bones. Like, talk on that, Vadir, because this is crazy, dude.
My thing is, like, what value do you get in really owning a T-Rex, right? Like, and I understand the monetary value of it and whatever, but was this collector like reliving like his 7-8-year-old life? You know what I mean? Because if
I guess,
like if I'm an 8-year-old and my dad's about to buy a T-Rex, I'm livid. You know what I mean? But if I'm the collector, I'm like, do I really want a $20 million dinosaur?
Where are you going to put it? Outside of the money, if you have the money for it, you gonna put that in your entryway? Is that going to be in your backyard, like as a bird feeder? Like, where do you put something like this?
Well, we would hope that a collector is not putting that in their home and they're actually loaning it to a museum or some type of institution. But for those that do, I'm pretty sure that there's dinosaur bones somewhere on somebody's property, especially in LA. I know for sure there's got to be some somewhere.
I would not be surprised if it's Leonardo DiCaprio or Johnny Depp. They got some dinosaur in their backyard. That's crazy.
Yeah, at least some type of bone or something from it. But like, the replicas, how could it not? I guess my question is, how could it not be replicas? These bones are, ages old, and trying to put them together like they do on display, I would think, certain things get broken, certain things just over time erode. And you have to replace them for the presentation value, because you put that on Sotheby's or Christie's floor and you got bones broken and it's just shattering, it's looking crazy, then your $20 million asking price starts to look a little shady. It's probably shady from the beginning, or it's probably low, actually, because if it's authentic T-Rex bones, it should be priceless. You know what I mean? Like, that should be going into a national history museum or something like that. So I guess, like, my question to you in this is, should they even be allowed to collect dinosaur bones, or should that go directly to an institution who can properly preserve that?
I say it should go directly to an institution. No human has any sense dealing with this. Like, you're going to collect it and then do what? This isn't Jumanji. This isn't like Indiana Jones. Like, you're not going to just, pop up with them and be like at a barbecue, like, hey, you guys, check out this authentic T-Rex I got. Like, no one cares.
But they do that though. Like, it, like there's somebody, like we talked about Leo or Johnny Depp, when the parties happen, they're showing off their, think about like someone like Damien Hirst, right?
Yeah.
When he's putting the
shark and the lamb.
All these shows, and people gawk over those, to have an actual, well, it'd have been crazier if it's like got the T-Rex skin and all that, like maybe in preserves. That now
Right,
that would
right,
be
right.
insane. But you know, the bones and all that, it's like that's more of
Archaeological.
yeah, archaeological history instead of
Yeah.
art. You know, it shouldn't be sold.
No, I agree. And I just feel like are like Christie's and all these auction houses, are they hurting that bad that they're just like, yo, what you got? Like, we'll sell it. Like, I feel like this is like a very far reach for some of these luxury blue chip auction houses. Like, I don't think this makes sense to sell, especially when, like, in the legal documents of the dinosaur that this company Black Hill had, or this,
Mhm.
I believe it's like a foundation that owned this.
Yeah,
Approximately over 100 painted casts of the skeleton were made out of polyurethane. So it's just
yeah,
like, wait, so y'all knew it was fake and you still tried to sell it? It's like,
yeah. That was
come
the one in
on.
2020. That
Yes, the
one,
2020. Yes.
and they've been titling these, like they've been naming these, you know,
Yes.
T-Rex too. Like, I guess this one is called what? Let's check the records. What is it called?
Stan.
Shin,
Oh,
Shin or
yeah. Shin.
Shan,
Shin.
and the
Okay.
other
Yeah.
one was called
Stan.
Stain,
Stan.
right?
Stan. Yeah.
So like it
Stan.
seems
Yep.
like the marketing is lending to the name too, because with this one being in Hong Kong, you
Yeah.
know, they're giving it, you know, Shin more of a, you know, a
Yeah.
name, you know, more to the region, you know, with Stan was more based in, you know, America, more European. So it's all in the marketing. And also, like you said, like Black Hills is retaining the intellectual property rights. So
Right.
what are you really buying? If they can make casts, 100 casts of it, why don't you just wait for a cast? Why
Yeah.
don't why don't they just sell the original piece to an institution and allow people to buy the casts? You
Mm-hmm.
know, now if the casts sold for a certain amount of money, then I think I'd feel a little bit better about that. I mean, I wouldn't buy one myself if I had the money, but you know,
I would agree with you about that because it's almost going back to the sense of like when a painter paints something and then they take it to an artist print shop where they can print these in colors on certain paper and everything and sign them and have a limited collection of them. That makes sense. But it's
mhm.
like people know they're getting a copy, but it's limited. So it's like you guys are still trying to push this piece off as real when another company owns the intellectual properties. I'm just like, hey, buddy, I got some NFTs over here you would like to purchase.
You know what I mean? Straight up.
Dude, like it sounds crazy. Like
I
now I'm
mean,
like, this is where NFTs got the whole crazy jargon from because this doesn't
yeah.
even make sense that you would buy a replica but not own everything. It's
I mean,
like, come
it's
on.
crazy because you're right. This does sound almost like an NFT project. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna auction off, you know, 100 NFTs of Stan or of Shin, and
Right.
you know, you can be part of an exclusive group of people to own one of the only T-Rexes. You know, like it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, it's like the auction houses will sell anything, you know, if there's a market for it.
Right.
Um, and this is one of those luxury items that's like it's like I don't know if you've seen the Netflix show Pepsi Where's My Jet yet.
I've seen it, haven't watched it yet, but I remember that dude was out there.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was buying pallets. He was calculated like, and he still wants his jet at
He still won his
47.
jet. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like it touches on like in contract law of what can and can't be sold. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
As far as like or like not what can and can't be sold, but what the agreement specifies as legal, you know, in a transfer or what you can legally put in branding and things like that. I think they should look at items like this in the same way. You know, like
Yeah. It's just misleading. It's
it's
misleading to the
very misleading.
actual buyer who is interested because it's like, we're not going to sit here and call these collectors dumb because they
They're not
obviously
done.
have the
Yeah.
money for it. So if they're
Mhm.
going to purchase something, they're going to want to know what the paperwork is. And
For
now
sure.
it's like Christie's got caught with their pants down. Now they're like, oh, we're going to add this to a note later that, hey, they may not be all real bones. And it's like, you didn't have
Yeah.
that on the original.
But even if they, let's say it even, if it didn't even get to the market, right? And they
Mm-hmm.
sold it to an institution, then this argument wouldn't even matter, right? Because
Right.
the bones would be the bones themselves. They wouldn't need the replicas. They
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't need anything. They could put that in the description
Yep.
that some of the bones are missing, but this is the actual skeleton that was
Yes.
unearthed.
Yeah.
That's more official to me.
I think you won't have a fight. No
You
one would
wouldn't
be
have a
upset
fight.
because people would see it as the Institute is trying to give you the full idea
Exactly.
of what this creature looked like when it was alive. So I think people would be like, dang, you can't even tell the real from the fake. And that's in like
Mhm.
an educational environment. But when you're trying to sell it off for $20 million and not tell them that it's partially fake, it's
Yeah.
almost like you're trying to run like one of those scams. You're trying
Oh,
to
for
get over on
sure.
somebody.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the big things in auction, besides having the full artwork, is
Yeah.
having the right provenance and having the right paperwork, and like a little bombshell like that, um,
Because it's just,
it's tough. Go,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
it's tough. No, I was going to agree with you. I was about to say it's just tough because it's like, if that's the case, what's stopping the whole cast from Jurassic Park from being like, hey, I got a I got a tyrannosaur. I got not a tyrannosaurus. What is that? A brachiosaurus horn in my garage. And it's like, if y'all selling that for, if you selling half a dinosaur for 20 million, I could give you a fake horn for at least
Yeah.
100,000.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if there's owners of these, skeletons or portions of skeletons, I think that, if you own it, you should be able to, yes, have the rights to own it, have the rights to reproduce a copy for yourselves at home. But the original actual bone or the skeleton should rest in the institution that can properly conserve it.
I agree.
It can be, like we talked about Leo DiCaprio. If Leo
Mm,
wants to buy it, it can say, sponsored or bequeathed, from the estate of Leonardo DiCaprio,
yeah.
but it's here being preserved. And Leo can have a freshly made cast,
Yeah.
of it that's done by an artist that, I mean, almost to the moment, resembles what, is inside the institute's collection. There's
Hmm.
no harm done. people
None.
people wouldn't care that that's the re thing because they know you own the original,
Right.
almost kind of like an NFT.
Right. It's That's what I said. That's what I said in the beginning. Like, hey, let me tell you a story about a thing called an NFT because that this sounds that it sounds almost similar, man. And I was just like, one, it just blows my mind that these pieces aren't in an institute to be
Mhm.
showcased and preserved longer than
Yep.
going in someone's private collection. Like, that to me is just like,
Exactly.
that's weird. That almost takes us back to our conversation of like the keeping of human bones. Like,
Yes.
when are these institutions going to be like, okay, we shouldn't have people's families remains, like we
Mhm.
shouldn't have them, we shouldn't have anyone's, even if they're from Egypt, even if they're from um the Aztec. We don't need to have these are very sacred to somebody, these are somebody's traditions, these are somebody's culture. Like, you guys need to just leave that alone. And I think once someone stands up and has that strong like voice for it, I think it'll stop, because that's all it takes is one person to get pissed, and then
Oh yeah, for sure.
everybody's like, you know what? I
But
think they have a.
did
I think
you
they're right.
did you hear that recently they just found, um a bunch of different sarcophaguses and things like that, or sarcophagi, I should say,
Yeah.
um at an institute in Egypt, and they were like, it was a video on YouTube of all places. That's where everybody gets,
Yep.
their information, from Twitter to YouTube.
Yeah.
That led me there, and I was looking at it, and they were opening up, which, I would be totally afraid to open up a,
Anything.
an old coffin from
Mm-mm.
that, just because of the bacteria and everything that goes in there. There's
Man, you
been,
think COVID is bad.
yeah, you think COVID is bad. Exactly. You catch a little bit of that, it's a wrap for you.
We've seen
Uh,
all the scary movies with when they open that coffin, and whatever
Woo!
comes out, it turns into a monster, zombie. I'm good.
Oh yeah, I done seen all the whole Mummy
Yes,
series,
the
so
whole
I know
mummy
what's
series,
going down.
exactly.
But it's like, the first thing I thought when watching that was like, okay, first off, like it's a dope find. I'm not going to take anything away from that. Um, but could this, and maybe it couldn't, I'm just assuming, could this have been done on site? Could they have kept this in its original place on site, did whatever test that they needed to do or whatever, and then placed it back? Is that so hard, or do they have to worry about grave robbing? Because that's a whole thing too. That's a whole, thing
Yeah.
out in there as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
It's kind of like what I tell my students what's wrong with society now, that if it's not videotaped or documented, it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what you do, like that would be perfect if we could just take a core sample, let's close it up, let's put it back to its original. We can't, because you have to understand there's so many people involved in finding it,
Yep.
unearthing it, uh trying to preserve it and doing all these things that it
Transporting it without it getting
transport.
stolen.
Right. So it just falls into this thing where it's just like, damn, like it, it if you don't document it and move it, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I just
Yeah.
feel like it that would be good in hindsight to just like, let's just document this, videotape it, put it back together and leave it alone. But I've just always been curious why us as a culture are fascinated with the dead. Like, why do we need to know how Egypt lived, or how
Hmm.
the Mayans survived and all that? Like, why do we need to know what they ate and culturally and all these things, when it's just like our technology we have now? We have sonars that could go like 200 feet into the ground. Like, why do we need to disturb these pieces when it's like that's disturbing somebody's heritage?
Yeah, it's a very fine line with that, because I agree. Like I would, we would all hate if 2000 years from now, our great grandmothers or we ourselves, are unearthed in some type of experiment, especially, as with Black people, we've been through Tuskegee and so many other
Right.
experiments, and now we're getting one, and after being put in the ground is a whole other thing. But to be fair, there's been a lot of, I would guess, advancements in understanding about culture, understanding about rituals, ancient religions,
Mm-hmm.
um, burial techniques, things like that. And but the bad part of that is that it doesn't stop there, right? Like,
Right.
it doesn't stop at the education. It doesn't stop at, okay, this is how they did things. So this is how we could use this to learn. And again, like I was saying, now we can place it back to where it can rest back in
Mm-hmm.
peace. We're not doing that. It's like, all right, now that we've extracted everything that we can from this, who wants to buy it?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Can I get
all
twenty
right, now we're
dollars?
done. Who needs it? It's up for auction. You can now have this piece of history that you can now gawk over, because
Yeah.
now that we've extracted everything we needed from it. And, kind of like back to the grave robbing thing, like, is that robbing of the grave itself? Maybe. If they put it back, will someone strip off the gold of the coffin? Will someone strip out, the different, jewels or whatever that these,
I was
uh,
just about
uh
to say that the
yeah.
jewelry, because they
Mm-hmm.
even said, I think we saw the same article where they had like gold teeth and a gold
Yes.
tongue. It's like that's pure
It's
gold.
pure gold.
That's
Yeah.
not this diluted stuff we have now. This is that straight from the mouth gold. Like, this is like that stuff. So it's just like that right there holds so much weight right
Yeah.
there in
I mean,
itself.
we're this last week talking about, the Paul Allen collection.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a King Tut
Gold
gold, you know what I
tongue.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
imagine what that's going for. Like, we talked about 1.5 billion, and looking at, old Leonardo's that go for
Yeah.
$400 million that may or may not be fake. Imagine what that would bring. You
Right.
know, like
Right.
you
That's
know,
and the funny thing is like I know we touched on this topic, but like where are the climate activists then?
yeah,
Because
yes, yes,
you're doing a lot of damage. You're doing a like if I was a climate activist, I was like, dude, we already had COVID. We don't need COVID, chicken pox, monkey pox the third. We don't need any combination of like things being released into the world. It's just like, don't melt the ice plates. Why? Because you're releasing crazy stuff. Like, just leave everything. Like, if you really want to be an activist, do that there. Like, don't do it in a museum. Do it out there where there's literally unearthing bodies to just do
yeah,
what? I know it's history, but like put it back. Like
yeah.
do it like
And
my
one
mom
thing,
says, if you use it, put it back.
put it back exactly. And one thing I'm excited to talk about in the next episode is if any of those climate activists make it down to Art Basel and how that happens.
Ooh,
Because that'll
security
be
might be
very
tight.
interesting.
Security,
Security is going to be,
I
you
think.
know, they're going to be on it. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it just, you know, you make a great point. Like these are the moments, you know, when T-Rexes are sold and, you know, freaking constitutions and Magna
Mm-hmm.
Cartas and all this type of stuff are being sold for these exorbitant amounts and things that just shouldn't be sold. You know, that's a good time for the activism, in our
Yeah.
opinion. You know,
Yeah,
like
well, yeah, I think so. I think that demands your attention more than you going into an A-seed art gallery where you had to pay to get in to just throw paint and oil on something where it's like there's real stuff happening outside. Like go
exactly.
outside and take care of that.
Yeah,
Oh
like
man.
yeah, I
Don't get
you
worked
don't,
up over it. Don't get
yeah,
worked up over it.
you wish it didn't happen, but if it's going to happen, you would just like for it to be a little directed a little bit better.
Yeah,
You know,
I
and you
agree
know,
with
to
you.
add on to that, the little topic that we were going to talk about, but we don't want to get too deep in it, is up in the insurance of all of these museums and all that now.
Right.
And you know, people are actually starting to go to jail, like the guy
Right.
that glued himself to the Van Gogh at the Couture Gallery in
Yep.
London. So
So I think that's going to be nice because I feel like they're not stopping there. They're going to what you can go to the biggest art showcase and have free reign to walk around these things. Oh, it's going to happen there. I can't wait.
yeah,
I can't wait. I'm gonna get some popcorn ready to see what these idiots are going to do, bro. Like I
and I
cannot
mean
wait.
that's where the carbon footprint is at. If you want
Right.
to talk about climate, you know, how many private jets is in Miami right now, you know,
Getting ready to go to
getting
Miami, dude.
ready. You
All
know,
the
so
computers and iPads. And let's talk about not only that, but the Wi Fi and the internet and the phone coverage and the Ubers and the lifts and the Lamborghini. Okay, we need to stop because we
yeah,
don't
so
want
we
them
go,
coming for us. We don't want them coming for us.
but we're going to tap on that next week. But for another topic this week, as we keep moving forward, something dope, you know, I saw in the news, and also it kind of like I'll be honest, it kind of triggered a little bit,
Okay.
but you know, it has its roots in technology, which I'm a fan of. It has its roots in art, which I'm a fan of, and it has its roots in history, which I'm a fan of. And I know you're a fan of all those three
Mm-hmm.
things as well. And anyone who listens to us, but Morehouse, historically black college, in Georgia, they have a class that's going to teach black history in the metaverse. Well, they're already teaching Black history in the
I love it.
metaverse,
I love
and
it.
students have toured the Underground Railroad, a slave ship, and using VR to literally dig deep into artifacts. I see
Mm.
so much good with this, but I also see a few issues. But I'm gonna let you start with that. Go with that.
Bro, I don't see how there's any issues. I think this is phenomenal. I
Yeah,
do. I really do because it's just, bro, like we get to experience it. And I think a lot of, for us as Black people, not having a heritage or a lineage to connect to like most people in this country can connect to, this is a crazy way to find it because it's maybe an aunt or a niece or somebody that survived a slave ship crossing that other family members didn't. Like it's, being able to put yourself there in those ancestor shoes will help you to understand and grasp that like a lot of bloodshed had to happen for you to be here. And I
Mhm.
think this is a great way for students to immerse themselves in it so that when conversation of slavery didn't happen needs to be stopped because it's like you experienced it. You could smell the water, you could hear it, you could
Mhm.
you could immerse yourself in it. And I just think this is a phenomenal thing. And especially
Yeah.
for it coming out of a black college because we always have seen whenever sometimes it's black black driven or African American, we're not the ones who are in the forefront of it. We have
Yeah.
other cultures stepping in to portray what they think.
Mhm.
And I think this is dope. I think it's a class, bro, on like instead of living in a history book and reading it and testing it, you get to virtually see this. And I think being more visual and present with it allows you to retain it better than just having to sit there and read through a book. Now, that's my teacher side coming out because I'm very much on the I teach via visuals and not in a book because you can, when you teach out of a book, you're only teaching for a test. But when you
Yeah.
give them real life experiences, that allows them to retain that knowledge longer. So that's
Yeah.
my take. I can keep going on, but I know you said good and bad. So I'm curious to hear
No,
what your points.
I think you make the ultimate point because you are the resident teacher of this podcast, and looking at it from that perspective is the right way to look at it. And I agree, like the opportunity of this is immense.
Mhm.
The one of the first things I thought of when I saw this was, I hope they linked up with the sister from the 1619 project. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I
they had
hope that
to. I
yeah,
hope.
I hope so. You know what I mean? Because the brilliant work that she did with that project, and
Mhm.
to have that education forwarded and extended into some actual teachable literature that's combined with the artistic experience of VR, and the allowing the students, like you said, to experience some of the trauma and the stories that come from the history of that, and you know to relive it, if not over in an overall sense, in a mental sense,
Mhm.
through education, through the stories, through recreated visuals, where I see the, I guess I shouldn't say bad, but where I see the questionable things is that, um, how does everybody accept that? You know, not
Mm.
everybody thinks the same way. There are some people that will look at this as being very traumatic, taking it a little bit too far, bringing the past and reliving slavery as a only avenue for Black storytelling. I'll inject that Will Smith actually has a movie coming out on December 8th, where
Mhm.
he's a runaway slave or something like that. I don't have the title. I'll look up the title while we're talking, but he was catching a lot of flack about that because people are tired of seeing that narrative, you know what I mean, and that being the
Yeah.
only narrative that comes from the Black experience. What do you think about that?
Well, that is
Emancipation is what it was called. I'm sorry,
okay.
emancipation.
Well, that is the black experience in this country. We
Yes.
let's like if we want to talk about Georgia, was it Georgia or South Carolina? They just took slavery off of their books. They had to vote it
Yeah.
out in
Yeah.
2022. Was it Georgia? I can't remember, but they just
I
voted
think it
that
might have been
out.
Georgia.
Like if you're just voting slavery off, like you like it's banished and it's 2022, why can't we have a VR history, a black history class on the black experience?
Yeah.
And I think because since America is such a melting pot, right? It
Mhm.
is such a melting pot of cultures, people, ideologies, dreams, everything. I've had this conversation with my mom It's just that we had to create our culture. We had to
Mhm.
create based off of what we were given. We we couldn't we couldn't play certain instruments. So what did we do? We went to jazz and blues. We weren't traditionally taught how to do certain things. So what did we do? We made everything. We couldn't wear our hair a certain way. So what did we have to do? Adapt. So it's just like I
Yeah.
feel that it needs to be held because I feel there's becoming a disconnect with me being an educator. I feel that there's a disconnect between now and what happened back then because I feel many of our people don't understand the struggle of what many of our ancestors had to go through for them to have these privileges, right?
Mm.
And to like have my mom, I think my mom would love to definitely see this. She's like Black Queen, bro. She loves it.
Yeah.
She cried when Obama got elected. Like she had to live
Yeah.
this growing up in Memphis,
Mhm.
Tennessee, in the height of Jim Crow and segregation. And it's just like she never let us, like my three brothers and my sister, forget it. And this is the
Yeah.
same thing I'm going to teach my kids because it's like once you get so far removed from it, you don't you're not able to sympathize with people.
Mhm.
And I think that's the craziest thing about being Black is that we're always the forgiving type, we're always the sympathizing type, but I think it's because we understand we understand difficulty, we understand that difficult plight to
Mhm.
become the rose that grew from the concrete, if that makes sense. and
No, it
so
makes perfect
and
sense.
so I I really feel that everyone should experience it. It's not going to go away. It's part of this is American history. This isn't just Black history.
Yes.
Without
Yes.
us being brought over here as slaves, we wouldn't even be in the history books. Period. We wouldn't have had Jim Crow
Yes.
laws. We wouldn't have had any of this. So this isn't just Black history. This is American history. And everyone needs to see it because you have some states that are trying to take it off. Texas is trying to get it off. I think
Mhm.
Oklahoma is trying to not teach uh, about slavery and all these different laws. And it's just like, this is the way you have to think about it. If you have people out there that are trying to ban it and not allow you to learn it, why?
Why? Yep.
So that's why
Yep.
I think this is profound, bro. Like we need this. And I feel that this
Yeah.
generation, like my generation, uh maybe even my kids' generation, I wasn't that far removed because my grandfather was born on a sharecropper, as they used to call them, sharecropper land back then, which is AKA a plantation. So having that conversation with my grandfather when he was alive, I was able to understand that it wasn't always nice. It wasn't roses and sunflowers for people, for Black people, you know. And
Yeah.
I just firmly believe that if you don't want to experience it, fine, you live your truth, but you can't deny it didn't happen. We didn't just show up here haphazardly. And
No, for
that's why I
sure.
think this is, if people don't want to see it, fine, don't go see it. But I
No.
feel that at a historically Black college, you need to implicate this information all the way through to every school needs to
Most
have it,
definitely.
because if the historically Black colleges aren't showcasing this, where are these children going to learn this if you didn't grow up with a pro Black mama like I did? You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like I'm talking about, she's so pro
And
Black, we used to have to watch Roots and do book reports on them. Okay, so trust me when I tell
no, I
you,
feel you.
she
No,
was
I
pro
feel
Black.
you. No, like I guess my issue too is that, the Black experience, as we mentioned, is also a multiverse of experiences.
Mm-hmm,
Like we're never a monolith. The
mm-hmm.
Black experience is so much of a variety that we argue over it. Like we live in the social media era, not the scholarship era, for the most part. And I guess one of my big concerns is that, this will be presented to the students. Students could love it. And like as the article says, they're talking about, important moments and artifacts like the Amistad, the Ebenezer Baptist Church, other than just slavery and things like that. So these are iconic moments. And,
Yeah.
people get on something like a Twitter or, YouTube and debate facts and skew the learning, because after people leave this hour, 2 hour experience, they deal with the real world,
Hmm.
and there's people that are going to challenge, their experience. Or like if a kid comes home, not a kid, because this is obviously in Morehouse College, but I'm
Yes.
using as the younger kid as a reference, and he says, mommy, dad, we learned about XYZ, in class
Mm.
today. And that parent or that elder is going to say, well, XYZ is cool, but you got to worry about A, B, and C because of these things that happen in real life. So
Yeah.
there's experiences that shape, the African American overall experience or experiences that aren't documented as heavy that people have gone through. Like, for instance, like, there was a Netflix documentary of the finding of the ship Clotilda, one of
Mm.
the last slave ships.
Hmm.
Um, and that was just until recently. Like, and we talk about history, where's that going to be included? It didn't, you know what I mean? Like, it isn't until now that people are just starting to find it. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure there's people in the area that have known it, descendants, I'm sure, they're fighting
Hmm.
for it. They've known it. But how hard have they fought to get those in the history books and have been denied? You know,
Well, that's why I
yeah,
think it needs to happen at a historically black college and
yeah.
let it grow from there. Let it hit every black college and then let it go to African American history teaching programs of USC, UCLA, and let it hit every state because every state experienced it. We still have three living members from the Tulsa, Oklahoma
Mm-hmm.
riot that was like Black Wall Street, and they sued the city, and the city is still stalling them out. That's
Mm-hmm.
history right now. It's like they had to
Yeah,
live
yeah.
through that, and they still can't get their due. So it's
Yep.
not like it never like for people that say it never happened. That's crazy. You just don't
I
care.
mean, think about all the real estate that's been built over black cemeteries, and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, you just find out, oh my God, this was an old African church,
Mm-hmm.
and oh, why is Target over it now? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it
Right.
just, shows the commercialization of, this history. So yeah, again, like, I agree. Like, I think, the use of the technology and the use of artists to again put art in a different context, in an explanation of history, but not just sitting on someone's wall to be collected. Is to be collected mentally and educationally. I love that part of it. But the
Yes.
potential debate around the information is what pisses me off, because it can be miscommunicated and misinterpreted by so many people with ill intent.
Well, if there, well, I would like to think if you're at college, you don't have an ill intent. You're actually going there to, become tomorrow's leaders and,
Not the
educators
students
and their
though,
thing. Yeah, but I don't, but
the
that's the thing. That's why I
institution.
said,
Yeah,
but I said, if it's at an institution, you're going there to experience that. You're paying
that,
for
yeah.
that. That's why it's like high school, don't even breathe on it. That's a fight. Do it at a black institution, and then you ship it and you show other schools how they can use it and implement it
Mhm.
and implicate it, because a lot of these black universities came up from not being able to attend white universities, so that's its own history. So you can show every step until how your university got built to what it is today, coming from the
Facts.
slave ship and doing things like that. And I think what's dope is the and it's my favorite thing that I'm learning right now and that I'm going to eventually start teaching is the 3D creation of things, 3D modeling, and getting that down and getting more in tune with proportions and
Mhm.
perspectives. And like I would love to see the detail of it. I know it's probably in a very early stage, but I would love
Mhm.
to see the more detailed side of this get pushed out. And because who wouldn't want to sit there, who would not sit there, but just stand there and experience Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech with his March on Washington. It's like you
Mhm.
get to experience that, to feel that, to see that. And it's just like, wow, who wouldn't want to be part of one of the Little Rock Nine?
Yeah.
To just walk
Yeah.
and you feel so much anger and hatred around you. Who wouldn't want to be I believe the lady's name is Ruby Bridges. Who wouldn't want to be her, the black
Yes.
girl that did that? And she's walking down these aisles, and you have grown women and children and dogs, and you're walking with US Marshals so nobody will touch you. Like, who wouldn't want to and you're not trying to do anything crazy. You just want to
Yeah.
learn.
You
You
just want to
That's it.
learn.
So I think that full journey into that civil rights, it needs to happen, and I can't wait for it to come to the West Coast. I would love to see it. I know my mom would love to experience it. I just think, um I hear what you're saying about the possible, um I don't know, the
Well, I mean,
possible
it has it's
breakup
it's
of it.
it's it's taught by let me get the brother's name so we can shout him out correctly. Hold on, let me get Ovell Hamilton.
Hmm.
And he worked with a VR tech company called Victory XR. So I'm wondering if that's a package that you possibly can purchase for home consumption. With me having the Meta Quest and all these different access to VR, I wonder if it's something that he will allow, you know, people to experience at home. I know that he built a course around it for, his students that could potentially be exclusive to Morehouse's academic goals.
Hmm.
But is I wonder if there's um, just like a public version, you know, or is there different requirements to making a public version? Like there might be less hoops to jump in doing an educational one.
I
Versus public.
I think in order for it to be public, it needs to go through the African American History Museum, the one where they have Emmett Till's casket. They need to
Yeah.
have it there because it needs
Mm,
to be an immersive. It doesn't need to be consumed individually where you can get distracted. It needs to be
mm-hmm.
immersive where you have to sit there with maybe 5 or 6 people and just be present in that, because it's just like the Emmett Till casket. You don't
Yeah.
get 50 people in there. It's a very small room. You're standing there. It is quiet. So
Yes.
I fully believe it needs to be an immersive experience, which I think people and students can like experience, and they need to.
Do you think VR is a good interpreter of emotion when it comes to that? Because again, like we talked about the Emmett Till experience at the NMAHC, that's different. That's a different feeling, especially to someone that's never been to a young person's funeral. And sadly, I've been to too many. But to experience that on a personal level is like, how do you take the emotion from that in a generation that's used to that type of, you know, I guess shielding that information through video games?
Mm.
How do you make it not a video game?
I think you would have to bring in, like, you have to hit the five senses. You would
Mm.
have to hit smell, hearing, the visual. It's almost like that Disneyland ride, California Dreaming, where you get
Mm-hmm.
up in the
Mm-hmm.
coaster and then you're flying through the citrus, you're flying over the
Yeah.
water. You need to have that so that when they smell, because a lot of times when we smell certain things, we're like, whew, I know I'll
Yeah.
never forget what that is. So
Yeah.
I think you need to hit all those the major senses for that to go past the video game stage,
Mm.
where it's like you can
Mm.
hear the people screaming, you can hear someone getting whipped, you can hear someone trying to run away, you can hear the gunshot that killed Martin Luther King. Like, you need to be able to hear and smell and experience these things, because that's the only way, is when it's almost like painting.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use your wrist. Painting needs to be a full contact sport. Add the
Mm.
body. move your
Mm-hmm.
legs, move your limbs. It needs to be, because once you put all into it, you get these different brush strokes, and then that makes you feel differently. So that's why I think it needs to be a full, like, immersive way to go about it in order for
Yeah,
it to hit where it needs to hit.
yeah. I agree, man. And I actually, it reminds me of the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
where you would go into the planetarium. So the planetarium was like this theater that was, shaped like a planet, but they would go through all of the things of the solar system and all of these experiences, and had the 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 smoothing seats and all of that before
Mm-hmm.
theaters were able to bring them in. Like this was, so dope. But it gave you those senses. When they were talking about Venus or Mars, they would raise the heat up so you can feel going through a certain sunbeam or whatever,
Mm.
or
Yeah.
drop little sprinkles of water when they're talking about this, or turn the wind up when you're flying through Jupiter. So I agree, those experiences add so much more. I'm sorry, those elements of the experience add so much more to the just the learning and the retaining,
Mm-hmm.
of the information. um yeah, man, like I'm looking forward, and I'm hoping that, like you said, it comes either public or to the West Coast, or to, hopefully it gets to your university one day and you're able to teach it. And that would be super
That'd be
dope on our
phenomenal. I
side.
would love it. I would love that spin on art. And I also see that it could help out other forms of like history for other cultures too.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about dealing with the Mayan pyramids in Mexico. You can deal with the Native
Mm-hmm.
American Indians in the United States before it became the United States. Like every place and culture can experience this, and I think it's going to open it up where people will begin to sympathize with other cultures because they had to sit there and go through this experience, even though it might be an
Yeah.
hour, 2 hours. Like 2 hours of living in somebody else's shoes and being seen as a certain color and person, that can change a lot, because it's like you take those goggles off and you're like, man, I actually get to see what it's like when that person, like what people see, like what that
Mm-hmm.
person looks like and what they experience on a daily basis. I feel like that will ultimately, hopefully, make people sympathize with one another. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely.
Yes. So,
So
but dear, as we come to that pivotal point, our excitement point.
yeah,
Those are
yeah,
two
yeah.
solid topics, man. I could have talked on about the African American history with Morehouse, man, but we're going to get into a little bit more history with our artist spotlight. So, Badir, who is our artist spotlight for this week?
Today we have a brilliant painter, not just a painter, but a brother that was very much a visionary. He inspired those around him. Had a really good relationship with, like, family with the brother that we talked about in our last episode, Brother Henry Taylor. But we're talking about Noah Davis today. Noah Davis, just a little background. He was an American painter, installation artist, and founder of the Underground Museum in Los Angeles with his wife, Karan. When talking about his works, Davis has said, "If I'm making any statement, is just to show Black people in normal scenarios where drugs and guns are nothing to do with it." And he describes his work as instances where Black aesthetics and modernist aesthetics collide. Unfortunately, Davis died at the early age of, I think it was 32, actually, on August 29th, 2015, of a rare form of soft tissue cancer. I actually got to meet him once,
Ooh, speak
going
on
to the
that.
Underground Museum, because I found out, we had Gallery 38, which was
Yeah.
right around the corner. It wasn't too far from there, and we were just about to open, so we were scouting the area. I was, and I remember going there, and they had uh, his brother Khalil Joseph's work on, like, the Kendrick Lamar album,
Hmm.
before it got sent to Mocha. They had like a showing and stuff there, and I didn't meet him at the showing, but I met him on a random, like, day walking in. Um, and this is like they had the bookstore. I think they had the William Kentridge exhibition up, if I'm not mistaken. They had a
It's
really
the
dope,
yeah,
yeah,
because the
yeah, the
bookstore's
one,
in the front, and then you
yeah, they
walk
had
through that to the
yeah, you
back.
walk through the
Yeah.
bookstore in this space, and I'm hoping the Underground Museum comes back very very soon because I really 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 enjoyed that space. Um, but Noah was him and his family. They were just stewards of something beautiful in LA.
Mm,
You know, he was able to partner with Mocha to bring works from the collection into the hood. You know,
right.
at the Underground Museum.
He was even
He
making those pieces.
Yeah, he was making. He had this the show Imitation of Wealth, where
Yes.
he was recreating, you know, the works of there, and it was just like, yo, the brother was, you know, he used his brain, he used his idea, and he used his talent to really forward his message, and he really deserves, you know, our respect, our salute, and a big rest in peace to him, and you know, just a you know a thank you, you know, because stuff that he's done and his wife and family's continuously doing in this art world, um, is beautiful to see. It's beautiful
Yes.
to see. Sure.
I had the pleasure of not meeting him, but going to the gallery on multiple occasions, and it's very warm. It's a very
Mhm.
family feeling and like environment. And even when you go through the bookstore, they have vinyls, they have books, sketchbooks, they had crocheted pieces and different things like that. And then being able to go into the back, all the way to the back, where it's like they had like a meditation space and a lounge area, like
Mhm.
in the back where the turf and the tarps were. And I just felt like, dude, this is it. It felt, as Black people would say, it's like family. You know, you felt like
Yes.
welcome there. It didn't feel like out of place. And it was just nice because you could talk to the people there, and everyone was very knowledgeable about the show and who he was and what their promise is to the gallery and to the community. And I just found that very like an empowering thing, dude, to just be able to
Yeah.
like experience that, bro. That's crazy. I thought
Yeah,
that was
and
really
and,
dope.
and it was something that, you know, wasn't really seen
No.
in, you know, LA, you know, not just around, you know, the art world. I mean, I'm sorry, not just around LA, but around the whole art world. It wasn't seen.
No.
Like people weren't,
They weren't in tune, but he was. And he
yeah,
did
he
a
was.
phenomenal job of representing his people, representing art, and just making it accessible. That was the
Yep.
thing I thoroughly appreciated about his story, was making it accessible to the youth in the city who weren't able to maybe get up to a Mocha or a LACMA.
Mhm.
He had it right there in the hood on the main street off of Adams. Like
Yep.
you can't get any deeper than that than going into Watts or Compton. Like you're right on the street, a major street. And I think his goal of making art accessible probably, I wouldn't even say probably, guaranteed influence
Oh
many
yeah.
of the upcoming artists who would have never even thought that something like this could be in their neighborhood.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I've met some great people there, that I'm still friends with today. So, you know, the space that he created cultivated a really good community.
Hmm.
It cultivated some amazing shows. I mean, I've saw some amazing shows there.
Hmm.
Um, and it gave you the confidence, you know,
Hmm.
as a black male in Los Angeles, to know that, yo, like I could do a space and, you know, support the artists that I love to support, you know,
Hmm.
and there'll be people that will enjoy that. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And that's a beautiful thing.
Yes. Yes, it is. I think it's phenomenal. Great guy. Sorry we had to miss him. We had to lose him like
Sure. Rest
that.
in peace, Noah.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for listening to our podcast. My name is Justin Robinson.
I'm by Darren McCleary to talk
Yo.
next
Oh
episode.
yeah. Oh man. Our Basil, I would just be looking. I cannot wait. Somebody's get you going to jail. You gonna lose
Somebody
your
going to
job.
jail. It's
Yeah.
like,
Well, we are the art school graduates. We are excited to talk to you next week after Basel, and we'll have some more content for you. So we'll catch you next time. Peace.
peace.